Chapter 3 The Sparkles. The whole Apple family got up bright and early the next morning to start work. Granny Smith took the first shift in watching over Calvados, and Applejack and Big Macintosh started working the fields. There had been a bit of an incident before Applebloom left for school. Cal didn't seem to understand why Applebloom was leaving, and was upset at having to see her go. It took a little extra coaxing and calming to settle him down, but they prevented a major incident.
Another incident.
Applejack and Big Mac started in the pumpkin fields, but the former felt that her heart wasn't quite in it. Her feelings were split two ways. The first being the most obvious, worry over her younger brother. It was well-placed worry, naturally. She'd had a hard enough time allowing Applebloom to stay home alone, and she couldn't even bring herself to do that. Cal may have been older, but being autistic, it was difficult to tell whether that would make a difference. He tended to get easily distracted, he was resolute and single-minded in whatever goal he wanted most, and most days, the whole rest of the world didn't exist to him. What he could possibly do without Applejack to watch over him, she didn't even want to guess. The other feeling was something she'd suppressed ever since before Cal had come home. She fought it every time it threatened to surface again, especially when Twilight had inadvertently brought it up yesterday. She didn't want to feel this way, but it was always there, no matter how much she tried to will it away. As they began harvesting, Big Mac seemed to notice Applejack's lackluster attitude, then in a rare moment spoke up on it.
You okay?
Applejack knew what she must have looked like if Mac took time to speak on the matter.
I don't know, Mac. I'm just starting to think this visit was a bad idea. I don't want to think that way, because I know Cal's been looking forward to this. But I just feel like something bad might happen while he's here. Something have to do with him. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe not, but I just don't know anymore. Is it bad to feel this way?
Big Mac looked back at his sister with a warm gaze and gently shook his head.
Nope.
Are you sure?
Applejack insisted.
Yep.
Applejack still wasn't sure. She knew that, no matter what she felt, or toward whom, the shame should truly lie with her.
AJ!
Applejack looked up to see Twilight and Fluttershy trotting briskly into the fields towards them. She was relieved to see them, but at the same time, she just couldn't shake off that feeling of foreboding. Nevertheless, she greeted her friends.
Howdy, Twilight, Fluttershy. How y'all doing?
Good morning, Applejack.
Twilight said brightly.
Good morning, Big Mac.
Yep.
I've actually been looking forward to looking after Cal.
Fluttershy said with a grin.
He's so cute and sweet. I reckon we might really get along.
I sure hope we will.
Twilight added.
We decide to rotate every day when we come to visit. We'll always come 2 at a time, and each of us comes 2 days in a row before going to the next. Fluttershy will be back tomorrow and bring one of the girls with her. Then the next day, the pony Fluttershy brought will bring another, and so on and so forth. That way, Cal will get used to all of us. And with 2 of us here at a time, he won't get too overstimulated and get upset.
She looked at Applejack to read her for a response.
Sound good?
Yeah, I suppose.
Applejack trailed off, glancing back at the house. Then she resumed in an authoritative tone.
Now, look, y'all ought to know a few things about Cal. He's awful sensitive and don't like having his hoof or his face touched.
We know, Applejack.
And if he don't answer you, it don't mean he's being rude. He just don't hear things right the first time.
It's okay, Applejack, we know.
He can be a picky eater, too, and he likes the record player on often. And if he ain't through with something, don't try and take it away.
Yes, Applejack, thank you, but we understand.
Unless he got a hold of something sharp, or hot, or made of glass. In that case, don't panic, and ask him real nice.
Applejack!
Twilight spoke up.
Sorry, Applejack.
Fluttershy apologized for Twilight.
But, well, Twilight had something to say.
Applejack sighed and pressed a hoof to her forehead.
Sorry about that, Twilight. I just need to make sure of these things, you know?
Believe me, I get it. That's why I brought this.
Twilight unfurled her left wing and encased a thick, leather-bound book in her magic, bringing it out for Applejack to see. On the front cover read the words, Ponies on the Autistic Spectrum, Common Behaviors and Responses.
It took me hours to find books like this yesterday, but I've spent more extra time reading them since then, and now I think I can handle things.
Applejack looked back at Twilight with skeptical eyes.
Twilight, I already told you, I don't care for when ponies think they know.
Relax, Applejack. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but at least I have an idea of what Cal is like and how to appeal to him. Can you trust me? Cal will be just fine, okay?
Applejack frowned.
I just don't know. I don't feel right ponying him off on you two. He's supposed to be with family.
Fluttershy approached Applejack and gave her a reassuring smile.
We're family too, and we'd do anything for you. If you needed us.
Applejack closed her eyes and tilted her head down, deep in thought. This would be difficult, given her need to protect her brother and how unusual he could be in the eyes of strangers. But Twilight and Fluttershy were her best friends. If she couldn't trust them, they wouldn't be. And as much as they'd been through together, she couldn't refuse their willingness. Finally, she took another deep sigh and replied,
I'll be back inside every now and then to take over. I still say he needs to be with family, even if we are working all over the eclipse celebration.
She looked over at Big Mac.
Can you handle these fellas alone when I do?
Mac looked back at his sister with a benign look, and his voice matched it.
Yep.
Okay.
Said Applejack, satisfied, before she answered,
I'll take you to him and introduce you, just so we don't get a fright. Keep an eye on him, and remember everything I said. I'll be back inside of an hour.
Twilight and Fluttershy both nodded.
Don't worry, Applejack. Your brother is in good hoofs.
Big Mac's bedroom had an extra-large cot set up on the opposite side from the bed. Calvados was now sitting in the bed itself, gently bouncing in place as he scribbled away at a sheet of paper with the blue crayon in his mouth. He looked as though he hadn't even noticed 3 ponies walking into the room. It was just him and whatever portrait he was working on.
Cal?
Applejack spoke up.
I want you to meet some pony. You remember Twilight and Fluttershy from yesterday, right? From when they met us on the way from the train station?
Cal didn't respond and continued to scribble at his paper.
Cal, honey, these are my friends.
Applejack sighed and spoke a bit louder.
You met him the other day. Remember?
Finally, Cal dropped his crayon and looked up with blank eyes. He saw the 2 ponies that had accompanied Applejack, and like before, threw his hooves over his eyes, shutting himself off right away.
Oh dear. I hope we're not scaring him or anything.
Applejack sighed again, sounding a bit frustrated.
He does this sometimes. Like I said, he ain't too comfortable around strangers.
It's okay. May I?
Applejack nodded, and Twilight slowly walked up to the bed and stood beside it.
Hello, Cal. Remember me? I'm Twilight. We met yesterday.
Cal slowly lowered his hooves from his eyes, peeking over them at Twilight.
Yeah, that's better.
Twilight smiled.
You remember me, right? Twilight?
Cal muttered his answer.
Is Twily? Is your name?
Yes, that's right. I'm glad you remember.
She glanced at the drawing Cal had been working on and continued conversation.
So, do you like drawing, Cal? What's that you're making, huh?
Cal almost repeated his hooves over the eyes gesture, looking over his hooves at Twilight again. He then reached a hoof out to the doorway toward his sister.
Applejack! Applejack!
Applejack and Fluttershy entered the room, and the former answered,
What is it, sweetheart? Remember, use your words.
Once Cal saw that he had Applejack's attention, he pointed a hoof to his masterpiece, spread his hooves up over his head in a wide arc, and grinned.
It big? It's big?
Applejack and Fluttershy laughed good-naturedly at Cal's enthusiasm.
Yep, you can make that as big as you want it, Sugar Cube.
Oh, he is just so cute.
Fluttershy fawned.
I'm surprised you never told us about him, Applejack.
Applejack glanced at the floor several times.
I'm kinda surprised myself.
It's big! It's big!
Cal continued chanting, starting to sound agitated.
I know, Cal, I know. You want to make it big. You can make it big if you want to.
Cal continued stretching his hooves above his head, then pointed a hoof out the window, which had been bolted shut for his safety. He now seemed frustrated for some reason.
Oh, no. No, Cal, not again. Please, not now.
Hey, Cal. Cal, look over here. Look, Cal, look. I want you to see something, okay?
Cal stopped fussing long enough to look at Twilight, and the alicorn lowered her head, pointing her horn directly above Cal's head. Her horn then began emitting sparks, and a small burst of light flew from it.
Twilight, what in tarnation do you think?
Relax, Applejack. Watch.
The light hovered over Cal for a second before exploding in a burst of sparkles that showered all over Cal. He looked as though he weren't in any pain. In fact, he looked ecstatic. He glanced all around at the sparkling lights as they rained down on him, and he brought his hooves up close to his face, waved them repeatedly in front of his eyes, and began rocking back and forth where he sat. Applejack and Fluttershy looked in bewilderment as Cal kept up this unusual act.
Well, he looks like he's having fun. That's good, right?
He does this a lot, too. Dr. Lee's talked about this with us, about how he likes to give himself fun sensations and things. Now, what did she call it again? Stem?
Stimming, as in self-stimulation.
Twilight corrected.
If Cal's agitated and reduces stimulate in his environment by controlling what he observes and interacts with. Usually it involves insulating one observation, like bright lights or a fast-moving object, and interacting directly with his own way.
Applejack's eyes widened slightly. She was impressed with how much Twilight knew about Cal's autistic behaviors. It gave her reassurance that Twilight would take very good care for Cal if she had to. She'd thought Twilight was exaggerating her knowledge on the subject of autism just to appear knowledgeable. Most other ponies did when they didn't really know what they were talking about. But this made Applejack realize the time and effort Twilight had taken to learn more about this subject. Not just passive, nonsensical advice ponies offered to make themselves feel helpful. This was true, honest knowledge. Twilight had done her homework. It showed how dedicated she was to helping her friend. And it proved that Applejack had nothing to fear after all. Cal reached out to Twilight's horn and giggled.
Again!
Twilight met his giggle with one of her own.
Oh, you want more sparkles?
More sparkle! More sparkle, Twily! More Twily sparkle!
Okay, here they come.
Twilight replied excitedly and projected another light with her horn. The magical sparks showered Cal, and the colt began rocking and waving his hooves again.